Welcome to the podcast, Chris Graham, and I have wrangled Scott German to join me here. It's been a while since we've had you on, Scott, and I talk to you all the time. We text way too much, mostly about Hogan's Heroes of all things. Do you know what's coming up on Hogan's Heroes tonight at 10:30? I don't get the 10 o'clock
It's
show
going to
like you
be
do.
another nail biter. I can
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
promise you that. It's and they leave the best one for the Friday, the second episode on Friday night to leave you just thirsting for more for 2 days.
I know, yeah. MeTV is the home of this on cable, and yeah, they for some reason we don't get it on the weekends, so it's a long time. I mean, I watched this show growing up, and it'd been 40 years since I'd seen it. I don't want to watch. Well, I don't want to watch political news TV. I don't want to watch much sports TV anymore. I can't stand the ESPN talkers. So, MeTV has been a saving grace of mine lately between MASH and Hogan's Heroes. They don't make shows like those anymore.
No,
And I don't.
they wouldn't be able to air them.
It wouldn't be. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And I don't want to watch much ESPN. I can't stand Stephen A. Smith or any of those people. I can't really stand political news. And it's getting to a point, Scott, where I can't stand UVA Athletics anymore. It's just so heartbreaking. We're not in baseball season yet, so we're still on the bad part of the year. Um, let's start with football. 13 guys in the portal as of when we're recording here, 3:30-ish on Wednesday afternoon. And hey, nobody has entered the portal since Monday, which was the day the portal opened. So that's a good sign. It's not necessarily that it's over, but that's a good sign. Um, One of the guys, though, being Anthony Colandrea. Uh, hmm. Okay, let me share my opinion first, Scott. And I want to get your opinion. I do not think that Colandrea's decision to step away has anything to do with being benched. Um, I think it's more a factor of how he's reading how things are with this UVA program. He doesn't like the offense. He agree, and in that I agree. I'm sure you agree. And he wants to go somewhere where he can be better utilized. But I want to get your thoughts. Do you think, I mean, and you have some people you talk with around the program. Is this something that's related to just being benched for that one game, or is it a bigger issue with him?
And I think it's a bigger issue. You know, if a kid pouts and wants to go quit because he's benched a game, then that's probably a kid that you're better off without. Um, I think it's more of a problem of the offensive coordinator and the uncertainty of the whole program. Um, the uncertainty of whether Coach Elliott was going to still be the coach next year, whether the offensive coordinator was going to be told to pack his bags, which why he hasn't is a question to me. I think it's just more that he believed in himself and he felt like he could take his game to a program that would be better suited. And it was obvious that with Calandra, it appeared to me we were back to putting a round peg in a square hole again. So I think it was more of the uncertainty. I'm almost certain of this, the uncertainty of the entire program.
Yeah, I when I did a piece, and I've repeated this a few times since, when I did the piece when he first announced he was going to enter the portal. I'm starting to, we've watched him for 2 years. He started 17 games. He played most of an 18th game in 2 years. So that's a lot of action in the last 2 years, true freshman and a sophomore year. And I'm starting to think, all right, well, if I'm looking for a quarterback, what would I want to fit him into? I look at Anthony Colandrea as a guy who would have fit really well into Robert Anai's offense, Bronco Mendenhall's offensive coordinator's offense, because he's 5'10", so having him drop back into a pocket, which is the pro style offense approach of Tony Elliott does Kitchings. At 5'10", you're susceptible to if the pass rushers are disciplined and stay in their lanes, the two big guys in the middle, generally, you play 4-3 defenses. That's the standard defense in football now. Um, those two 6'3", 6'4" guys in the middle are 6 inches taller than you are. As long as they stand up and keep their hands in the air, you can't see over them very well. You're not going to really hit a lot of short stuff over the middle slants and that kind of thing. And if the edge guys also stay disciplined, um, you'll what we saw happen a lot in the last few games of the season will happen. He's not going to be able to find anybody open, and he's going to have to run for his life by running out of the pocket, and thus running backwards 5 yards to try to find a way out. The offense is reduced to, getting yards through him running for his life, or he's going to get sacked. In either of those situations, or the third possibility, which we saw a lot late in the season, he'll throw dangerous passes because he's so frustrated that there's nothing there that he wants to create something. And we saw that at the end of the Notre Dame first half, 3 interceptions in the last 257. I think he's a guy in a spread offense. You give him the read option ability where he can hand the ball off to a running back or run himself. You give him quick reads with 4 or 5 receiver sets. If the quick read isn't there, he takes off running. It's the Brennan Armstrong offense. It's the Bryce Perkins offense. It's not going to get you in the NFL, but it'll get you some good stats at the college level. That's where he fits. That's how he fits. And he's going to go to one of those school that runs that kind of offense. He'll put up good numbers next year. Um, I suggested Scott in a column. I'm sure you read this. I wrote this last night as we're recording Tuesday night. Why doesn't UVA change the offense and take advantage of those talents? Um, they're not going to, but that would be because they're not going to find a better quarterback. He's ranked two different rankings, ESPN and On3, have him the number 7 rated transfer portal quarterback, and 2 of those quarterbacks have already committed ahead of him, so he'd be the 5th best guy out there right now, still available. Virginia's not going to get a top 5 guy out of the portal.
No, not from what we're seeing is scheduled to visit UVA. That's
No,
not.
they'll be fair. Chandler Morris, the North Texas quarterback, he's ranked in the top 10 of available quarterbacks. He's also a 5'11" guy, though. And if you're going to put him in the same offense you put Colandrea in, you're going to have the same problems.
Yeah, you're going to have the same putting a round peg in a square hole. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. But if you go back, let's go back to when Tony Elliott first came to Charlottesville. He 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 tore down the offense and he tried to make Brennan Armstrong a pocket passer, right?
Yeah.
And Tony Elliott left Clemson where he had a pretty good quarterback to play that position in the pocket. I believe he's playing in the pros right now, Trevor Lawrence.
Well, yeah, and he had Deshaun Watson before
And
Trevor Lawrence.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So what worked at Clemson doesn't necessarily going to work at Virginia. He tried that with Armstrong. He ruined him. He basically tore an offense apart that didn't need to be torn apart. And now he's doing the same thing with Colandrea. Colandrea is 5'10", they say. I've seen him up close. I don't think he's 5'10" or 5'11". I think he's
Scott, they actually list him at 6 feet tall.
well, he's not. That's just
He
an
ain't
out.
I'm
That's
6'1". He ain't 6 feet tall. Okay,
he
yeah.
may be 5'10", maybe, but he's not 6 foot. So and now he's gone, and we're going to bring in a quarterback that we're going to still try to run that same offense. It's just mind-boggling how the definition of insanity, I guess, applies here. Why are we trying to do this with basically the same profile of a quarterback?
Yeah, that's an issue. And you brought up Des Kitchings. We did some reporting this week on Des Kitchings that to answer questions about Kitchings and his status. When Tony Elliott got the job, December of 2021, obviously you have to hire staff. In the first week of January 2022, he hired Des Kitchings and John Ruzinski, the defensive coordinator, among his first hires, obviously. And what's interesting there is, so I've FOIA'd Freedom of Information Act requests for all the contracts of all the assistant coaches and support staff. I was 24 in all that I got back from UVA in response to these requests. I had to do 2 requests because I needed some more background on Kitchings and Ruzinski. They signed 3-year deals in 2022. So 3 years will be 2022, 2023, 2024. Now, so that's standard. I mean, usually, a new coach will do a 3-year deal for especially a new coach for coordinators of that nature, for some continuity. Um, Early 2024, though, January of this year, both those guys were re-signed to basically give him an extra year. So they signed new deals that gave them 2025 as well. Despite the numbers, now Ruzinski's defense the first year was actually really good, top 50 in the country, both in total defense and scoring defense. But the defense has regressed mightily the last 2 years, somewhere in the 90s to low 100s in both total defense and scoring defense each of the past 2 seasons. The offense has been consistently bad, in the low 100s, both in total offense and in scoring offense each of the 3 years. But more importantly, in the first 2 years, because Des Kitchings was signed just like Rudzinski was signed to an extension, giving him an extra year based on now, his resume was thin coming in. He was a 1 year coordinator at Vanderbilt, didn't get retained. A 1 year offensive coordinator at NC State did not get retained. He was already coming in with a couple of black marks against him, if you want to say. And then he comes in and has two terrible offenses in his first 2 seasons, and he gets an extra year as a reward. Um, don't know, Scott. I don't know why that's done. My speculation on that, I'll just throw it out there, is that going into this season, Tony Elliott knew 2024 was going to be a make or break year for him, and perhaps it ended up being a break year. Next year now is going to be his butt on the line year. But he wanted to go into that butt on the line year with his staff in place instead of being told you have to replace guys. He's basically saying I would rather go down in defeat in my battle, in my war with guys I've been to war with than with a whole new staff of guys. But that's the only reason I can think why you would sign those guys to an extra year based on their productivity or lack thereof.
I was going to ask you that question is what warranted him getting an extra year?
Yeah.
Uh, Certainly not on field results. They were disastrous. And the second question is we all know the circumstances surrounding Bronco Mendenhall and his departure from Charlottesville. Let me see how I was going to frame this question. And Bronco was basically told to either let the defensive coordinator
Nick
go
Howell.
or Nick Howell or reassign him, and we know how that went. So my question is kind of twofold. One, why was the same ultimatum not given to Elliott after 3 years of 3 years of the offensive coordinator? And would you say the offensive coordinating Virginia's offense now in 2024 was worse than Virginia's defense and Broncos last year,
Um,
or similar?
that it's similar. That defense was bad. That defense was bad.
Well, the
But
offense was bad.
no, the offense wasn't as bad as that defense. No, that
So that was my question. So the offense this year was not as bad as the defense in Broncos last year, what was 2021, correct?
2021, but I'm saying that, I mean, the thing about Kitchings is the offense has been consistently bad for 3 years now.
3 years.
I was going to pull the numbers up here because I've got them somewhere here really quick. Let's see here. I'm looking it up here on my stats here. So, the offense ranked 103rd nationally in total offense, 126th in scoring in 2022, 95th nationally in total offense, and 95th in scoring in 2023. So, and there's 130 roughly teams in
Right.
in FBS. So we're
So that's
talking
near the bottom.
near the bottom in both. And then this year, the offense was 93rd in total offense, 105th in scoring. So it's bad and not getting better. And
And then you can delve into that deeper and look at the red zone offense,
oh yeah, the red zone
which was
offense.
one of the bottom five at
It
one
was,
point.
yeah, in terms of scoring per red zone possession, it was a little inflated. The NCAA list scoring percentage, not scoring per possession. So the only official stats you find are scoring percentage. And Virginia was even like 105th in that. But when I did my own accounting of actual scoring per possession, it was bottom five in the country this year because too many of the scores were field goals. Will Bettridge led the nation in red zone field goals. That's not a stat you want to lead the
No,
nation in, because that
that's
means
one
you're
you want to stay
kicking.
away from that.
Yeah, you're kicking too many field goals in the red zone. It's because your offense is getting bogged down in the red zone more than anybody else's is in the country. And so yeah. So a frustrating thing is, okay, we could say, well, he's under contract for another year. We're paying him money anyway. And the contract, by the way, both those guys in the coming year will be paid, through the three different means. They get a base salary, they get supplemental compensation, they get licensing compensation. I guess because base salary comes from the university itself, actually. You're not the university athletics, but university itself. They're considered university employees for that base salary, and then the other two come from athletics. $975,000 a year. So I say that to say, hey, if you want to buy somebody out, $975,000 is, in the scheme of you look at the total revenues for UVA football, 50 to $55 million a year. You could get a donor to write a check for that. In fact, supposedly we had a donor last week commit $5 million a year for the next 10 years to improve the football program. Um, you could improve this football program really quickly just by, okay, no offense to Des Kitchings as a person, but you're not the coordinator anymore. And we'll make the offensive coordinator and play caller a guy named Tony Elliott who won two national championships as an offensive coordinator and play caller. If I'm Tony Elliott and I'm going to go down in flames if the season works out next year the way it looks like it's going to work out, I'm going to go down in flames doing what I do best, which is call plays on offense.
Right. We talked, I think you wrote a column on that,
Yeah.
that at this point, what viable candidate would come to Virginia as an offensive coordinator, knowing that the head coach is very, very much in a lame duck situation? You're not going to get anyone, with any kind of pedigree. So the other side of that is Elliott, just what you said. If you're going to go down in flames, at least know that it was your doing. Which to me gets us back to the question: why is the offensive coordinator still here?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is what I said a little earlier, that Elliott is making the decision. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down with the guys who I've been there with, even though that is the classic definition of an insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's not to say that you couldn't still have Des Kitchings lead an offense that you're tweaking, and I'm not even talking about tweaking. I'm talking about massive overhaul. Change the approach. The pro style offense works at a place like Clemson because your 11 guys are better than the other guys' 11 guys, and you got a better quarterback, you got a better line. You can keep things simple. The pro style offense is a pretty simple offense. It's not about scheme. It's not about, doing crazy things and all this, motion and eye candy and all this stuff. It's about we're better than you are. You know what we're going to do, and we're still going to beat you at it.
Right.
Clemson can do that because Clemson's got better guys. Virginia is not going to have better guys than the other side too many Saturdays. Maybe when we play the FCS team, maybe when we play Coastal Carolina. But when you play an ACC ball, you play another Power Four, you're not going to have better athletes than they are. You got to out scheme them. That's what, we look back on it now. Dr. Bob, Robert and I, certainly had his quirks. One too many laterals to offensive linemen for our liking, and we only saw one of them, but that was one too many for our liking. But he could put an offense together. He had 1,000-yard rusher in Jordan Ellis. He had running quarterbacks who could throw the ball. That 2021 offense was ranked third in the nation in total offense. He developed quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and he did it with guys that other schools overlooked. That's what you got to do if you're at a place like Virginia. You're not going to beat out the top teams in Power Four for the best quarterback, for the best lineman, for the best receivers and running back. You're gonna have to make do with what you can get, and this staff doesn't do that. So that's a frustration point.
Well, and they could have moved. They could have moved Catchings to another position. It takes at least two of those guys to stand on the sideline and hold the background tarp up so that the signals can't be stolen. Right.
And to be fair, I know he's a running backs coach as well. Every
Right.
coordinator
There's
has
there's
his
other
other.
positions.
Yeah, there's other things you could do. You could change the offense under Kitchings. You could change Kitchings.
And
Um,
if he felt like he could do better, he was always the option to leave it and going to get another job was there for him. So,
Well, but if I'm him, I'm looking at my track record and saying I probably don't have another job coming anytime soon, unfortunately. So, one
so
thing,
speaking of Anaya, real quick, tell
okay,
me, just refresh my memory. What head coach did he work under?
Bronco Mendenhall.
Yeah, Bronco Mendenhall, who was quirky, but
Yeah.
Bronco's done pretty well since he left UVA. He
You
had
know,
a system. He had a system at Virginia.
he was
Um,
5-7 at New Mexico, a place that had not won more than 4 games in the last, I think it was 9 years, coming in. And he's now got the job at Utah State, which had a recent bout of success, at least a 1 year success under the previous coach. Why am I forgetting his name? Anderson, the guy who got fired for some issue regarding not reporting a sexual assault from one of his players back in the summertime. They then went 4-8 in the Mountain West this year with their interim coach. 4-8 doesn't get you the full-time job. Broncos going back to Utah now at Utah State. Utah State is making the move from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 in 2026. So one more year of Mountain West for Utah State, and then they'll be in the Pac-12. So a chance for Bronco to go back home, and then also make a move up to a power conference. I guess we'll have to assume that the Pac-12 will be a fifth conference. Well, they won't be officially a power conference because the new college football playoff rewards the Power Four, and then there's a group of five winner that gets into um, the top group of five conference championship winner gets a bid, and they will be more in that group of five at least through this contract and through 2029. But still, it's the Pac-12. It's got the lore.
right, and they're adding some pretty good teams. Boise State going to that conference,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
they are.
Um, San Diego State. I mean, they're not that that's a net power, but there are some good teams going.
They're moving the best part of the Mountain West, except for UNLV. UNLV decided to stay in the Mountain West and be the dominant team there, I guess. But for the most part, the best of the Mountain West move into the Pac-12, along with Washington State, Oregon State, the holdovers, who've been keeping the lights on the last couple of years.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty much all they're doing. No, so yeah, good. It's a good move for Bronco. I was going to bring up Scott, the challenge ahead for fleshing out a roster. This is something you and I talk a lot about, so we might as well talk about it here on the podcast. Um, you wrote a column. This is you got me thinking about this in an interesting way a few weeks ago. You wrote a column. I was copy editing your column, and I didn't do a good job copy editing it. You said there were 30 seniors and grad seniors on the roster, and I thought, that sounds good. And then I thought, well, I should look this up. So the next day I looked it up, and Scott, you were actually usually you overestimate things. You're the pessimist of all pessimists. You would be a
I was hopeful, wishful thinking, right?
yeah, you were yeah, as it turns out, there were 43
Yeah, 43.
seniors and grad
And
students,
and
not 30.
and I will be on. I pulled up the UVA roster and just before I wrote it, just randomly scrolled it through it and came up with it.
You,
I didn't
you
do a
got
very good job of
you got
scrolling.
tired at 30, which is fair because
Yeah,
usually
I
your
thought I
senior
was at the bottom of the roster.
yeah, usually at 30, usually your senior class is like at around 20 or 22. I mean, because you sign, 25-ish guys most years in your prep class, and then those guys, by the time they get to be seniors, a few of them have transferred out or quit or whatever. So you're down to, 15 to 20 or so. Not 43, but the 43 is because of a couple of factors. One, everybody who was active in 2020 got a redshirt year, the COVID redshirt as we called it. And then the guys who were active in 2022 at UVA specifically got an extra redshirt year because of the way that season ended with the shootings canceling the end of the season. So that's why you effectively had the equivalent of two or 2 point something senior classes coming out this year. Now, of those 43, some of those guys will still have eligibility left because of other red shirts, like medical red shirts or things like that. But and we won't know a final number on how many of those 43 may have the opportunity to come back. I'm guessing and it's just a guess, between 5 and 10 at most will be coming back. That still leaves you, 35, maybe to 40 guys that you'll have to replace. In addition to now, there's 13 guys in the transfer portal. Now, some of those seniors and grad seniors are among the transfer portal guys, so you don't want to double count. But yeah, this could end up being a need in terms of transfer portal acquisitions in the 30 to 40 range for UVA football, which, each of the last 3 years, Tony Elliott has averaged, around, I think it's 12, 13 guys he's picked up off the portal. So he's going to have to more than double that this year. That, that's going to be really hard, Scott, as we both have discussed at length.
I followed the football. I would, back to Dick Bestwick's days, and I've never. I mean, this is almost double of what they've ever had to replace in one season. Um, and then adding to this is the NIL. Players are looking for payday. Chris, I'll be honest. I don't know how he's going to do it
Yeah.
without dipping really into the FCS ranks. We already have dipped into the Ivy League, and that's turned out fairly well with Neville and a couple other kids. That's not to say anything, disparaging about the Ivy League. You can get decent players. I'm still wondering why Neville wasn't used more this year, but that's another topic. But I don't know how he's going to put a roster together. Certainly, they're going to have such a watered down spring practice that spring ball that they're not going to get anything accomplished. It's going to be a tough 2025 season. I mean, I don't know how any you could expect anything, but it being a long season.
Yeah, that's the only way you can put it. Because I mean, not just from the fact of needing that many players to come in. I mean, some of the just machinery of this, the mechanics of this, you got to get guys through the admissions office. Um, that's something that we overlook as observers, fans, writers, but that's an important thing. And, when you're no, used to dealing with 10, 12 guys, and, obviously you're going to run a few more applications through admission than the guys who end up coming because some of those guys are going to have obviously almost everybody's going to have multiple offers out there and they're going to run their names through multiple admissions processes. But, even if you assume 50% success rate of that, you're talking, maybe you're running 20 to get 12 or something like that. I mean, if you're having to get 30 or 40 guys, how are these admissions people going to vet 60, 70, 80 applications to get your 30 guys? And so what that tells you is they're not going to be able to get whatever number they need to get to either 85 or 105. And that the roster limit is fluid too, unfortunately, because the NCAA hasn't finalized the settlement in that legal case that will eventually up the roster limits or the scholarship limits, excuse me. It'll lower the football roster limit from 121 to 105, but it'll allow you to have 105 guys on scholarship. Right now you have 85 on scholarship. Okay, so that's in flux as well. We don't that may be in place. It should be in place for next year. You just don't know. So, but we're not going to get all the kids we need in to get to whatever the roster limit is for next year. So you're going to go into spring practice with less than what you need. You're going to have to pick up some more guys between April, May, and June. Get them in summer school. Again, mechanics that most people don't think about, but they got to
Right.
go to summer school. Eat one or both sessions and then get in training camp. So we're not going to, it's almost guaranteed we're not going to have a full roster going into spring practice. Will we have enough guys on the offensive line is a bigger question because you can't really run scrimmages without, a full offensive line room. And then will we have enough guys in the summertime? Probably yes, but having enough guys and then having enough quality guys, two different things entirely.
Yeah, it's far. Yeah, that's not numbers don't always equate to quality, right? So,
Yeah.
um, which sitting here on just dying to bring this up because it is just sore subject right now. Chris, where's the leadership with the athletics in this right now? Carla Williams is all but MIA. I texted you earlier. The only evidence that she's still among the living is a picture that was taken at the college football playoffs war room, and she was sitting in that room. But there's nothing coming out of the athletics office. She didn't even make a comment regarding the so-called $50 million donation. It was left up to the associate athletic director, I believe, or deputy athletic director to do that. You would think that that would be something Carla, the AD, would want to get out in front of and make that announcement. And there's nothing coming out of the director's office as far as stability, where we're going to go, how we're going to utilize that fund, that donation. I'm just amazed at how the university is operating under this shroud of secrecy.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been on the forefront of reporting on this, dating back to the summertime. Actually, the reason I got into this, I did a FOIA request for Carla's contract, and I didn't do it because I had any question about the length of her contract. I was actually, if my memory serves, there was talk at other programs about hiring a general manager for football, and I wanted to find out because, and I saw Alabama, for example, had just at this point as I was getting ready to file this FOIA request, had just hired a person to be their football GM, and they were paying this guy like 850,000 a year, and I wanted to figure out. Well, one, I asked UVA Athletics, was there any plan to put a football GM in place? Formally, the answer officially was no. Um, but then I wanted to get a handle on how much. So if this got Alabama, the football GM's getting paid $850,000, how would that relate to Carla Williams? So I wanted to FOIA her contract just to be able to see what she makes. And then when I FOIA'd that, I found out what she makes, which when I added it all up, is $1.09 million per year. I happen to notice that the contract expires May 31st, 2025. So that was interesting to find that out. Then noticing that there were people in social media and message boards out there saying, well, she's under contract through such and such date and whatever the case may be. I could say no, that's not true. I mean, I see it's right here, and she's the contract is up in on May 31st and of 2025, and that's not good. I mean, that makes you a lame duck. If it's we use that term in politics a lot, but lame duck means you're in the last year of your contract. I made a big deal back in the spring, as everyone watching this is aware, about Tony Bennett, his contract only having 2 years left on it. That was a huge issue to a point where after a month of writing about how Tony only had 2 years left on his deal, UVA offered him an extension, even though his heart wasn't in it. He signed it, another 5-year extension, just to shut me up. And that was because he had 2 years left on his deal. Carla's got at this point, less than 6 months left on her deal. Word getting to me from a member of the Board of Visitors, who's, repeated this to me several times, that she is out interviewing actively for other jobs. The implication being that she's not going to be at UVA after May 31st of 2025. So, that okay, I say all that to say if she's not going to be around after May 31st of 2025, that means we're going to have a new AD in place. Um, if we're going to have a new AD in place, you wouldn't want so if you wanted to make a move like a number of schools did this year with coaches who were either 2 years into a deal, 3 years into a deal, and not even Power Four schools. We had MAC schools who fired coaches after 2 years. Um,
Appalachian State fired a coach that had a winning record.
yeah, yeah. Um, so schools who have lots less money involved in football, a lot less on the line, are still saying we got to fire our coach because he's not winning games. Virginia has a coach who's 11-23 through 3 years. The last three UVA coaches who had 11 wins in a 3-year period got fired after that third year. Dick Beswick, who was that guy in the early 70s? 71 through 73. I can't
Sonny
remember his name.
Randall.
No, Sonny only lasted 2 years. It was the guy
Uh,
before Sonny. I've got it somewhere, but anyway, he was 11-22 in 3 years, and then Mike London was 11-25 through a 3-year period, 2013 to 2015. All three of those guys got fired at the end of their third year.
was it Don
Um,
Lawrence?
Don Lawrence, yes, yes, and Don Lawrence and Dick Beswick were coaches in the 70s and 80s when the money was a lot less than it is now.
And Chris,
Um,
they won 11 games when they played 10.
Well, they played 11, so they won 11.
11 in the season.
They were each 11. Those two guys were each 11 and
So
22.
they had a higher winning percentage, probably.
Oh,
Winning
they had
percentage.
higher. Well, because Elliott's 11 and 23. We didn't get to play the two games at the end of 2022. I would have lost those two games, as it turns out, but didn't get to play them because of what happened at the end of the 2022 season. But point being, 11 wins in 3 years at UVA gets you fired. But if your AD is not going to be the same AD, if the AD who fires thus has to be the AD who hires. If you're going to fire somebody at the end of a college football season, you've got to do the best you can to have the new coach in place before the transfer portal opens. North Carolina's not done that. North Carolina's still sitting on the pot, and they need to do something to get off the pot with Bill Belichick. Transfer portal's been open for 2 days. The signing period was last Wednesday, a week ago from when we're recording this podcast. That is not the way to do a college football transition. So if Carla was going to fire Tony Elliott after the Virginia Tech game, she'd have to hire the new coach, and she would be hiring the new coach for somebody who's going to be the AD after her. As far as we know right now, everything we know, she's got less than 6 months on her deal. She's actively interviewing for other jobs, from what we're being told by official sources at UVA. Um,
And Chris, we haven't even discussed the ramifications of this pertaining to the basketball program,
we know
which
we need a new coach there. Yeah.
if the university it knows that she's not going to be there, she shouldn't be there now.
Well,
If
here's
you're
what
going to
I'll.
fire her or pay her off, they would owe her probably prorated salary of about 500,000. If she's making $1 million, about 6 months left on her salary, because a new AD now needs to make decisions on the football coach, and it's looking more and more likely that come the first week in March, the second week in March, we're going to be hunting for a basketball coach. So is she still going to be the lame duck AD? If the university knows she's not going to be there on after May 30th, she should not be there today.
Well, I'll defend in this respect. What you're doing now, what is being done now, let's say, with the basketball coach search. She said, and I was, I asked the question standing there after Tony Bennett's retirement press conference, October 18th, I think it was. What's the status? And she said that they're going to do a national search. Now, at this point, all you can do in terms of a national search is hire a search firm. Um, that's likely been done. You don't have to hire a search firm. You can do it yourself, but everybody hires a search firm these days. So hire a search firm, and then the search firm reaches out to the agents of existing coaches. Just to or the search firm starts with identify candidates, and then reach out to the agents of those candidates to gauge interest. That's all you can do now, because everybody else that you would hire is under contract. You're not hiring somebody who's sitting on their butt right now. So you can't really hire anybody now anyway. And the results of this search firm effort are not going to be any different whoever gets the report back, if that makes any sense. So that can go on its own. As far as the football, no decisions have been made, so none are going to be made. They're not going to fire Tony Elliott now. Let's just that's not going to happen now. He's not going to be given an ultimatum to get rid of Des Kitchings. That's not going to happen now. So you have a football
If
coach
that
for
was going to
2020.
happen, it would have happened Sunday morning after the Virginia Tech debacle. The
Exactly. That
latest,
would have
the
that would have
latest
happened
Virginia
within
Tech.
hours of that game. Yes.
Yeah.
So
And we
I've
know
been
the staff is in place. That's what we're going to deal with in 2025. So what you're
we've
saying
we've
is the
both been in the
basketball,
room. We've both been in the room when Al Groh and Mike London were giving their last press conference.
right?
So we know how that happens. We've been there to see it happen in front of our very eyes. No, yeah. So the football coach is the football coach. The next AD will hire a new football coach probably this time next year. That means that yes, I don't think anything needs to happen as far as Carla Williams's status. I mean, she could still presumably sign an extension. I'll throw that out there. She could still presumably sign an extension. People like to bring up to me. I've had a weird email back and forth with some guy who was convinced I needed to issue a retraction and apology in the last week, because he sent me like he had the golden grail of comeback to me. Well, the Board of Visitors voted in June to re-elect her to the position of athletics director. Okay, great. her contract says she's no longer employed after May 31st, 2025. This re-election is just something that allows the president to renegotiate a contract with her,
Right,
essentially.
right.
She can, she's re-elected and now she's got to sign a contract. And then this guy argues back with me, well, that's because you asked for her current contract. Her next contract doesn't start till June 1st of 2025. That's not how contracts work, buddy. I'm sorry to tell you. If this guy didn't claim to be anything, but if you're a lawyer, then you need to go back to that law school in the Philippines and ask for your money back. Um, but no, she's
The law school that Saul Goodman went to. What was that?
talking
American Samoan or
to American Samoa. Yeah, no. The point being, I guess, getting away from that is nothing needs to happen if it's going to happen until that basketball job needs to be dealt with. Um, and that's
which
like I said,
unfortunately looks like it's going to have to be dealt with sometime in the middle of May or middle of
well,
March. Middle of March.
it would have to be dealt with either way, actually, though, Scott. If you're going to
Right.
hire Sanchez, you still need whoever's going to be your AD on June 1st to be that person making that decision. You don't want to saddle that new AD with a coach that maybe that AD doesn't want. If there's going to be a new AD, the two sports programs at any university that has football that make money are football and men's basketball. If you don't have a football program, it's men's basketball. So your AD wants to be held accountable for people that they feel comfortable with in place. Maybe that's why she ran Bronco off. She didn't. Carla didn't hire Bronco. Bronco was a holdover from Craig Littlepage. Um, she's got her guy in place now, Tony Elliott. She inherited Tony Bennett. She inherited something good. He won a national championship when she was AD, but that had nothing to do with her. But that now we're going to have likely two new coaches, and it's going to be a new coach, whether it's Ron Sanchez or somebody new. But it's likely at this point looking like it's going to be somebody completely out of the Tony Bennett tree. The way things are going this season. Um, but yeah, that new AD, whoever that is going to want to be is going to want to hire their own guys for those jobs. And so whatever's going to happen with her, it'd be nice to have that resolved. No doubt about that. But now I got to throw this in, Scott. Um, just to throw it in. Jim Ryan's status has got to be decided as well. And I know he signed, he's got an extension into, it's either 2028 or 2029. I've got his contract sitting in my email inbox to study. I've followed that as well. But there are issues at the university outside of athletics. In fact, athletics is a distant third, if it's third, in terms of big issues. There's a brouhaha ongoing at UVA Health, which is a $2.5 billion a year business that could threaten the leadership at UVA, including Jim Ryan and their future. And then there's also the matter of the external review conducted by the Attorney General's office into the circumstances leading to the November 13th, 2022 shootings that likely aren't going to look good on UVA leadership as well. So if things are where I think they may be as far as the UVA president's status, his status might be up in the air. If his status is up in the air, that's got to be decided before the AD status is decided. Then you get down to football and basketball coaches. There's a lot of layers to this story.
Yeah. Athletics is, like you said, a distant third, which it should be in this case. So again, leading us back to the current AD, pertaining to the rumors, if you will, strong rumors, I believe to be the case that she is actively looking for other jobs. Maybe she also sees the handwriting on the wall after the reports are opened in February about the shootings that the president may be gone. If it's the president is gone, the AD is kind of like what a head coach is to an AD that an AD didn't hire, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all a big uncertainty now, and maybe in a month or so couple of months we'll have more clear vision on this. But
Yeah,
I
that external review is going to be released early February because that's when the sentencing in that case is. The Chris Jones is due to be sentenced There's a 3-day hearing scheduled February 4th through 6th. So the university has pledged. Now they've pledged a couple times to release that report, and they haven't done it yet. But they've now pledged to release it after that sentencing is done. So 2 months, less than 2 months, we should be getting that report, and then we'll find out about the UVA Health thing. Um, so, and Scott, I want to say this too, and this might make me unpopular, and also make me look like I'm talking on all sides of an issue because I've raised issue with Carla Williams over lots of things the last several months regarding okay the whole push for the $80 million football ops center, which seems unnecessary in lots of ways. Also, the lack of work on game day atmosphere at football, leading to you can still get people to come to games. Virginia Tech football in the last 6 years has I think maybe two more wins over the last 6 years than Virginia does, but they still make double off their ticket sales because their fans still come to games, even though their team sucks, just like our team sucks. Um, and so I've been critical of her in that respect. But here, if I'm Carla Williams and when she got this job, I mean, she's the first African American female AD at the Power Four level. That puts you in line. Hey, if you do a good job there, and UVA Athletics has won numerous national championships under her watch in the non-revenue sports, but they've won numerous national championships and won in a revenue sport, basketball, men's basketball. That puts you up for, you do a job at UVA for she'll be finishing her 8th year at the end of this year. You can be up for commissioner jobs, NCAA president or executive vice president jobs. I mean, other AD jobs at even better schools in Virginia. Um, and if you look at the circumstances, not only the questions about leadership, like, is Jim Ryan going to still be there after a few months, as one example, and then also, okay, this is one part of the football we haven't talked about, Scott, but we talk about a lot when we talk back and forth and text back and forth. The issues with getting uh, football players in particular, through the admissions process. ADs are usually judged on football and men's basketball. Football, though, 2/3 or 3/4 or 90% of that is football. Um, if your school through its admissions office doesn't allow whoever the coach is to recruit a team that can win games, um, and you're going to be judged on that as the AD, maybe that's a factor pushing her out the door as well.
Uh, Possibly, but did she not know this? Just as did Tony Elliott not know what he was stepping into when he left Clemson to come to Virginia? Did Carla Williams not know that Georgia, when she left Georgia, the admissions policies, the overall commitment to football at Virginia is pales into comparison to Georgia? I mean, you got to
You
hold
don't
some
have to.
accountability to Elliott and to her to know that, hey, these are huge obstacles, huge mountains I'm gonna have to move if I'm going to be successful here. And she hasn't done it as an AD, and Elliott certainly hasn't really done it in football. Now, some of the things that outside of Elliott and her control is the admissions, but um, still, I can't help but to believe that they knew what they were getting into.
Well, on the other side of that, I mean, I would think if I were because on the other side, okay, on the other side of that, Craig Littlepage hired Bronco Mendenhall who was a perfect guy for UVA. He recruited at a place that's difficult to recruit to previous to his job at UVA at BYU. For different reasons, it's difficult to recruit to BYU, but still, I remember his introductory press conference in December of 2015, him talking about he was asked a question about the difficulty of recruiting to Virginia, and he talked about how difficult it was recruit to BYU, a religious school with very strict regulations for all of its students, including its student athletes. And he said, yeah, there's, thousands of players each year available from high school ranks. And we may look at that and say we only can get 50 guys who we can actually get into school at BYU. He said the good thing about that is we only need 25 of them. And,
Right.
and that was a very positive approach to take. If you're now, Craig Littlepage also hired Mike London, who did not work out. Uh, he also, he hired Tony Bennett, who worked out. Tony Bennett was more of a hire along the lines of Bronco Mendenhall, a guy who before his run at UVA, coached at Washington State. You know, you're recruiting kids to go to the middle of nowhere, Washington State, near closer to Idaho than you are anywhere near Seattle, out there in Pullman. And so, you know, hiring guys who know how to recruit in difficult circumstances, that's an advantage. And Craig himself knew that because he was an assistant coach at UVA. He was a coach at Penn, the head coach at Penn. And then so he, you know, he had a lifetime of recruiting at places that are difficult to recruit to. Yeah, UVA decided to hire Carla Williams in 2017. She comes from Georgia, a place where, you know, the athletics department runs the school rather than the other way around. But if you're taking that job and you're Carla Williams, you're thinking, well, they're hiring me for a reason. They're not hiring me to come in. They know my background is at a football school. Prior to Georgia, she was at Florida State as a top athletics administrator. So they're hiring me for a reason. They're not hiring me because I'm good at hiring people who recruit to difficult schools. They must be wanting to move in this direction. And then they didn't move in that direction. You
Right.
know, if you remember the hoopla about Carla was, we're going to play big boy football now.
Exactly.
And we ain't playing big boy football now. And so it's
We're
not her fault.
still we're still we're still under the mentality of being Harvard Monday through Friday and Alabama, Georgia on Saturday.
Yeah,
And,
we're
and
Coach Carton
that's
still.
not the way it's working. That's not the way it will probably ever work at Virginia.
And then she hires Tony Elliott, and you know,
We
and maybe she made the pitch. Look, I'm still working on him, you know, and we don't know because Carla doesn't talk to the media, and I've never sat and talked to Carla one on one. Nobody gets to do that. Uh, maybe your husband does. I don't know, but you know, but she could presumably would say, "Hey, Tony, you know, he had the choice between Duke and Virginia. Duke is playing big boy football now. They already
right.
signed a quarterback. They lost their quarterback on Monday, and they got a quarterback on Tuesday who's
The
just as
top
good."
rated quarterback in the
Top
portal.
rated quarterback. Yeah, they lost like the number three rated quarterback on the portal. They got the top rated.
And Chris, I bet if we look, the U.S. News and World Report, I bet if we look right now, they haven't dropped 25 spots in their academic rankings.
No, and they've been playing big boy basketball. They've been playing one and done basketball since Kyrie Irving.
And I think we talked off the air. I have a close relative that graduated from Duke, that went to Duke undergraduate, went to Duke Medical School, and she tells me that most alumni have no problems with the athletic department. It's a small private school; they need that revenue. Uh, they don't have a problem with the one and dones in basketball. They don't even look at those athletes that are on the basketball team and football team as part of the academic process at Duke.
Well,
Just hired mercenaries.
if they think they need the revenue, they don't need athletics doesn't make money. Athletics barely pays for itself. But no, I see the point. They don't see it as part of the same
Maybe the just the notoriety that if Duke
thing.
wasn't any good in basketball, Duke would be Wake Forest.
Well, and this is the big answer as to why anybody plays sports and puts all the money and effort into sports at the college level. We're the only country in the world that has college sports that are a business like a multi-billion dollar business like this. And in schools, as I mentioned, you look at the reports. I look at the reports. Nobody makes money. Most schools lose money at athletics.
Even the big powerhouse football programs.
Oh, they lose. The football programs themselves make money, but they have to pay for other sports. The overall athletics programs lose money. There's like 10 or 15 most years at the top. And I'm saying 10 or 15 out of just in Division One. There's 364 schools in Division One right now. 10 or 15 make money, and they're not making enough money to build a new building or fund a new program. They're just making enough money to be able to, you know, go to the next year and with an overage. You know, I think Texas A&M one year had a reported operating surplus of about $50 million. Everybody else was in the $5 to $10 million range. And so nobody's making money at this, but what they're doing is it's advertising. All sports is advertising. On Saturdays, when your team's playing for 3 hours, they're saying your name, University of Virginia, for 3 hours. They're saying Duke for 3 hours. They show the kids having fun in the stands or whatever, right? And
Well,
so,
not our kids at football,
well, not our kids at football,
because
but you
they
know,
come as dressed as empty seats.
NPCs. Well, and so do most of the alums.
Right.
No, but it's 3 hour infomercials for the two schools who are playing. And it,
So looking at what you're saying is that the Georgias, the Alabamas use the football program as the front porch to the university to attract students.
So does Virginia. So does Bridgewater College.
But
So
does
does
Virginia
NAIA.
need that? This maybe that's the crux of the whole problem. Does Virginia need that to attract students?
Yes.
They do.
Everybody. Why else are they spending $150 million a year on athletics?
So
Well, if you're not making money at it, why are you doing it?
right.
I mean,
Uh,
the answer is it's and we see this in years where okay, I remember I did a story on this way back in the day. This is 1999. Virginia Tech football goes to the national championship game, loses to Florida State. Their applications the next year and for the next couple years afterwards were at record numbers. The number of applications coming in from from prospective students, and when you have more applications coming in, you can thus be more selective
right.
your because your class size will be the same.
Right.
So you have more kids applying, you can actually raise the average GPA and SAT
Right.
scores of
Your
your kids
academic
coming in.
profile
Yeah,
is elevated.
because of the constant free advertising going on. It's not, and I wrote this in a column a few weeks ago, and somebody wrote me a an email saying, well, kids don't go to school because they want to watch football games. And that's not what I'm saying. They don't come to the school because they want to watch football or want to watch basketball or want to watch field hockey games. It's that it's advertising. It's getting your name out there. We write about UVA football, basketball, or baseball every single day of the year, 365 days a year, including Christmas, including my birthday, including when I was in the hospital with a pulmonary embolism. I wrote two stories that night after they pumped me full of blood thinners. We do this. Everybody else who covers UVA does it. Everybody who covers the ACC, Power Four, Group of Five, down to the D3 level. It's to get the media attention. It's to get the games on TV. The people who come to the games, that's just extra. That's the people who really are diehards and they want to come to the games. We all donate money. Most of it goes to the athletics program, but some of us also say, "Hey, I'd like to donate money to the school. I want to donate to the alumni association." And then if my kids go to school, I want them to apply. Um, so it's all advertising. That's the only way it makes any sense because why else would you spend, in UVA's case, 150 million a year? Texas A&M last year spent 264 million dollars on athletics. Why are you doing that if you're not making a profit at it? It's because you get kids to apply, you get alumni to donate the money back. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Which leads us, we talked over an hour, leads us back to this uh dilemma. If we're going to do it, why don't we do it right?
That's that's the end. Yeah, that's where we get
Why
to.
are
Yeah.
we doing it with one foot in and one foot out? Uh
And yeah,
because that's not working. So we either need to put both feet in and do it like Duke, and we don't have to, you know, completely disregard academics, but we can tweak the admissions policy a little bit, and play with the big boys, or else just drop down a classification or two.
and they're not going to do that because of
Too much money to be lost.
well, there's money to be lost, but they're not profiting. But there's the money already invested. We have Scott Stadium sitting there. What's Scott Stadium going to do if you're not going to play, uh, FBS football? What's JPJ going to do if you don't play ACC basketball? So there's too much sunk cost. Economists would say there's a sunk cost, but they're cost.
Right.
You've got all that money tied into that, and also you're not going to drop a level for this reason. Football, which is not good at Virginia and hasn't been for the last 3 years. It had a run under Bronco for 3 or 4 years. It had a run, obviously, for 18 years under George Welsh. So we've had success. But football, the last year we have the full revenues for is still 2 years ago, 2022, 2023. That sports academic year. Um, Virginia football had an operating surplus of it was slightly over $20 million. Um, that operating surplus was not because they sold a lot of tickets. They only had $7.6 million in ticket sales that year. Virginia Tech had 16, so more than double what we had. But it was because of TV money. ACC TV money for football to UVA football was $22.6 million. So our profit was entirely because of ACC football money. The operating surplus for UVA football, so basketball made $4 million that year, a $4 million operating surplus. Everything else at UVA lost money. So in effect, football's overage pays for the non-revenue sports. It pays for the women's swimming program that had gold medal winners this year. The women's tennis program that had two Olympians, Emma Navarro and Danielle Collins, competing in Paris. The rowing team, we had a bunch of rowers in the Olympics this year. It pays for all those sports. Baseball, it loses money hand over fist. The team that has been to Omaha twice in the last 2 years. So football, as bad as it is, because of ACC TV money, pays for all those other sports. So we have to keep playing football. It's just that we we're being subsidized by that contract. The
Right.
ACC does. If I'm the ACC, I'm a little pissed at Virginia for not trying harder, honestly.
Right. We're becoming one of those teams that Clemson and Florida State are saying doesn't deserve their share of the total revenue because we're not competitive. We're not.
Right. Yeah.
So we're quickly becoming Boston College and some of those teams that just don't appear to be really all that serious about.
But Boston College is 7-5 and going to a bowl. And I think,
Yeah.
and they went, didn't they
Yeah.
go to a bowl last year? I mean,
Yeah. They
so
did.
these others, we're not competitive. Okay, so we're not competitive because we don't let ourselves be competitive.
Right.
It's one thing if you have everybody can hire a bad coach. You can have some circumstances like that. So, something doesn't work out and that bad coach sets you back and you got to hire a new coach, and a new coach in football can take a couple years to get back from that old coach. Bronco Mendenhall is an example of that. He took over from Mike London. His first team was 2-10. By year four, he's in the Orange Bowl. So, that can happen. But when your policy towards admissions is the reason that you're not going to have a chance of winning on a consistent basis, and you're only in it because the ACC props up your non-revenue sports so that you can have Olympians in these sports that don't make any money. Yeah, if I'm the ACC, I'm not happy with UVA. If it's not even if I'm Clemson or Florida State. If I'm Duke, Duke's trying now.
Right.
Wake Forest is trying now. I'm upset at UVA too because I'm trying and they're not.
Yeah.
So
I know we're probably getting near the end of our time. So, from what I think we're saying is that we need leadership from someone, whether it's Carla Williams, Jim Ryan, or whomever,
Board of Visitors.
board of visitors that's got a combination of a vision for where we need to be and leadership skills. And I don't see anyone demonstrating that right now.
I don't. I
Nothing. I
don't.
don't. I mean, I'm not being derogatory towards Dr. Williams, but I don't see where she's demonstrated that, and she's had 8 years to do that now.
I don't. I can't blame her. She's a cog in the wheel. She's at the top of it, but
But should
or near the
would
top
she
of it.
not be able to go to the board of visitors and say we have got to make changes with our admissions, or
And
else I need to look for another job, which she could be doing.
and there's you've already answered your own question. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
know that's what happened, but we can
That's what I
see.
was hoping I was doing, answer my own question. And we see that it can be done. Duke University is just as highly rated academic school that Virginia is, maybe higher.
They're higher because of being a private school. They can be more
And
selective. Yeah, yeah.
and they're making these they're doing something. We don't exactly know what, but they're getting the athletes there. And no one seems to really be scoffing at how Duke's academics have been tarnished by this at all.
Northwestern is moving in this
Northwestern,
direction.
Stanford, Notre Dame.
Stanford, yeah, they're
There's
all.
plenty of schools out there. There's now not maybe to the level that UVA is academically, but there's other schools out there. Michigan
Oh,
is a good athletic school.
yeah, if you want to put the pantheon of those academic schools trying to compete in Power Four plus Notre Dame would be one. Stanford, Northwestern, Duke, Virginia,
Michigan, I think,
Michigan's in that range. UCLA
yeah,
would be in that
in
range,
that range.
and
So
Virginia.
they're out there,
Virginia's the one that stands out right now as the
and we're
one that,
not trying. We're not doing anything.
yeah, and we know because we know the stuff going on behind the scenes. Yeah, they're not giving the coaches the ability to do the job they need to do. Again, we're not asking because we're this podcast has turned into an infomercial for Save UVA Athletics, basically. Um, but no, we're not asking for let kids in with 600, 800 SAT or whatever the heck
You
they
don't have to.
we don't have to. No, we
Don't have to.
George Welsh won with guys in the 80s and 90s that a lot of those guys were good students, the Chris Slades, Terry Kirby's, the Barbers and all those, who were good students. And then we fleshed out a roster around them with some guys. We can put things in place to help the kids through the tutor programs and academic monitoring programs and stuff that we know
Once
are
we get them in school, once we get them in school, if they're not able to do the work, that's on them.
that's
But
right. There's
they
so
have the
many
help.
in place. Yeah,
They have the
not,
help. Trust me. And I've also been told, and this is what I'm not sure. I haven't confirmed this. We can do some digging, maybe that it's currently harder for the admissions department to get a student athlete transfer into school than it is a non-student athlete. Now, how's that?
I don't know that that's true. If it's true, it's an indictment, but it sounds a little too good to be true. Whoever, is bringing that up. But that said, it's worth exploring. But whatever the case, we know that it's difficult. It's hard. I mean, Al Groh proved this point in 2006.
Chris, back to that, and I think that real quick on that, and I questioned that myself, and it was a transfer student coming in from another school doesn't have to prove, doesn't have to have accredits if they say they can still graduate within 4 years. Whereas an athlete has to have transfer credits that will graduate them from Virginia in 4 years.
I see what you're saying there. That
Now,
does it because
because
the average
if a
student,
non-scholarship student wants to stay at UVA for 7 years, it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
feeding into UVA's coffers.
That I can go with, yeah, because yeah,
So,
a kid who's not a scholarship athlete, yeah, they can graduate whenever they want to.
so
They
that needs to be tweaked.
um, I mean, yeah, and I don't know if that relates to. I
Because
mean,
once their eligibility is up, if they haven't gotten a degree from UVA, that's on them. If they want to come back and pay for it themselves, so be it. If they
the only
choose not to, then that's on them, right?
the only question I'd have to that is without knowing right off the top because I haven't ever looked at this. Is that an NCAA regulation? I don't know the answer to that. Um, so because you to maintain your eligibility as an NCAA athlete, you have to maintain progress towards
I
graduation.
don't think it is because I keep hearing from this source that what Duke's doing in regards to that is that when a student comes in under an athletic scholarship, Duke is pushing the reset button, which
Okay.
means
Okay.
they can take as long as they want to graduate.
Okay. That's something
Yeah.
I'll have to
And
figure out how I
if
can.
that is indeed true, then there is a major wrench in the ointment or whatever the old saying is. There's a wrench right there that's a roadblock that we could correct quickly.
Well, there is, and let me, I'm writing down a note to myself there to actually figure out a way to ask that question without having to file yet another FOIA request. But if I have to
So
do that, I'll do
I
that as
guess
well.
what if a transfer through the portal has had 2 years, then he has to prove to the admissions department that he can fulfill his credit requirements within 2 years at UVA.
Yeah, and you have to if you come in, normally you would have 60 hours towards 120 after 2 years.
But my question is, who cares that once their eligibility is over with, if they want to continue their education to fulfill that credit requirement, then they just start paying tuition.
That's something to, without let me look that up and I can do a story on this and we can do another podcast
Because
talking
that
about
could be the major problem holdup right there.
if that is true, that could be a hold up. So that's something to look into. That is definitely
Okay.
something to look at.
Well, I
This is
wanted to throw that out. That's something.
people who are still hanging around with us here are witnessing journalism in action.
Right.
Because this is where it
Because
starts.
to me, if a kid has X number of credits and his GPA is enough to get him into Virginia, if he can't graduate in 2 years and his eligibility, he has 2 years of eligibility, why should that make a difference to the university?
Well, let's wrap on that note because that's a good thing to note. I'm looking right now, Scott. We're more than an hour in as we're wrapping up. Still no news on Bill Belichick. Ball's still on his court, according to ESPN. And I'm looking at the transfer portal for UVA. Oh, there's a new name that I had seen previously. Ben Smiley is now formally in the portal.
Hmm.
He is one of those guys that actually he's a grad senior. But he's had, in addition to the two redshirt years that everybody else got, 2020 and 2022, he had a couple of medical redshirts. He's actually been around since 2019.
I
Um,
think he played with Terry Kirby.
he's going to have like he's going to be a doctor before this is all over.
Right.
But yeah, he's in the transfer portal somehow, and he would be going for I guess that'd be a seventh year, which John Blutarski in Animal House. Um, put 7 years of his college experience at Faber down the drain when he got thrown out there at the end of Animal House. So, man, that's a long time to be in college. Anyway, but Smiley's. So I'd seen his name on another list. He's the only addition today. I had already accounted for him not being on the roster next year because of his I mean, he's like grandfather at this point in terms of football, anyway. Oh well, Scott, it's been great talking with you as always. Give
So
us
I
some
gave you
good.
an assignment. I gave you a homework
I gave
assignment.
me homework. Yeah, that's always good.
And
And
either
for
catch up with a podcast or follow this up with a column about if that
yeah,
is indeed true, then I think we've just found that we've just discovered the fly in the ointment here.
yeah, we can at least report that out to people and let them know why things are the way they are. So for Scott German, I'm Chris Graham. Hey, if you have a question, comment, any ideas for us to talk about on a future podcast or a future story, email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.